I'm not the same as I was on January 1st, 2019, as I am today. And I hope you're not either. I hope this past year of episodes has helped you grow as a writer and as a person. Let's talk about some of that in this final episode of Season 3 of Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to spell? Stop. Be happy. You don't bother me. I've seen better. Do you really want to do that? And my third grade, get up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Paul Sading. Welcome to the last episode of Horrible Writing for 2019. I'm not going away. You thought you were free. You'll never, ever get free. I've taken a little bit of time off just to take care of some things and get this final episode together. So I want to jump right into the episode. There's a couple things I want to talk about in the episode, about the writing year that has just passed, about the writing year ahead, and I'll take you out with some information, some changes that are coming your way. The first thing I got to talk about is the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. If you're not there, why in the world are you not there yet? Seriously, come on, it's December. But that group was a whole different thing in the beginning of the year than it is now. We're approaching, I can tell I'm from New York, approaching nearly 800 members in that group. Absolutely far beyond anything I had anticipated from the group. The level of writer in there, and who else is in there? We've got audio dramatists. Yes, they are writers, but they also do other types of things like audio and audio production. Sound designers, artists, book cover designers. We've got these people in there. And it's been everything that I've wanted it to be. No drama, no toxicity, no self-promotion. That's a win right there, isn't it? And it's grown by leaps and bounds. But that wouldn't happen without people like author N.J. Boyer, author A.C. Ward, author Cheyenne Bramwell, Dohai, who is an author. I'm just not sure what he's going to publish under. Erica Stensrud, author Jennifer Worrell. You know, these are people, wonderful people who keep that group together, keep me sane, keep us plugging along. And I wouldn't be able to do it without them. That group would have been too big by now to manage alone. And they actually manage it more than I do now. They're all over it before I can even wake up on the West Coast. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And no surprise, they're beautiful people. So if you're not there, please come over. This past year has been one of growth. We've done a lot of sharing, a lot of learning. That's what it's about. I would like to see us do more of it, but maybe in time when everybody or more people are ready. But I want to encourage you to come over. If you are part of the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being part of this journey. This year was a hell of a year for me, personally. And you all were patient and tolerant and understanding through all of it. And stuff like that is very important to me. In addition to the group, books, right? Because I kind of do these things called books. Those of you who listen religiously and you don't miss an episode and you've been around for, maybe even around for a while, you know that my goal for 2019 was to release 3 books just like I did in 2018. But what I realized during the course of the year was that I had found an editor that I really liked. I knew her style. I found out she was available to do novels. And she was willing to take me on, brave soul. And my writing wasn't where it needed to be. Even after publishing Chasing the Demon, 12 Deaths of Christmas, Novel Idea to Podcast. I was wrapping up Rip, and the scales. She took on the scales. And I realized while she was editing that this was a bigger job because she was making me be a better writer, whether I wanted to or not. And if there's anything that I can pass along in terms of this past year's lessons learned, is the importance of those editors who stretch you. Now, I have to be careful with that because that can be taken a multitude of ways and people will interpret it their own way and maybe not necessarily the most healthy of ways either on top of in that respect. So you shouldn't ever feel comfortable with what an editor is going to make you do, air quotes. They don't make you do anything. You make those choices. Editors don't own the story. They are not the be all end all. And the good ones know that. If your editor is explicitly or implicitly telling you that they are the be all end all, that you need to kowtow to their edicts, that you need to execute when they say jump, it's time to find a new editor. Paul's opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But they also shouldn't be, I don't want to say pushover, that's got negative connotations. They shouldn't be passive. They shouldn't be bystanders there for the ride, or i.e. the paycheck. An editor should make you grow. Regardless of where you are, it's a fresh pair of eyes. It's a new perspective. Or if you're new, you definitely need it. And if you've been writing for 30 years, you still need it because you get comfortable. You get blind to your own blind spots. And editors are there to help point those things out to us. They help us see those blind spots, and those alleys that we are voluntarily walking down, though we know we shouldn't. And I had a great one with Cindy, and I realized just how much I needed to change the scales, which is available now. Go support this show by picking up the scales for the horror fan in your life for the holidays, please. That would be greatly appreciated because it's a story that I'm in love with. Not just because it's the new book. Actually, it's the oldest story of all the books I've published. The Scales is now the 5th novel I have out there, or 5th book, 4th novel, 3rd novel, 1 anthology, 1 nonfiction work. Regardless, let's keep going on point there, Paul. It's the oldest of all of the 5 things that I have published in the world. And 6 if you count the short story, The Plant, which it's related to. But in terms of that, it's the oldest story. It needed the most work. And recognizing that it needed work, but it had been edited. It had been edited recently, as recent as Rip was being edited. And still, handing that book off to Cindy, my editor, made me really understand and really see where I needed to grow as a writer, and she pushed me to grow because she cared. She took the time. She gave a little more than what I was paying her for, which any of you starting out, if you can find an editor like that, and editors, I'm not asking you to start skewing the lines of what your product is. I understand getting paid for your work. Trust me. You know that us writers understand that. And I'm not trying to guilt anybody into volunteering more services than what they're being paid for. Just something for writers to think about. If you do have a neck and neck race for that editor, that one that you want to work on your book, one of the considerations is when they give you that first chapter sample, and that's my recommendation for anybody new. If you come across an editor who will not give you a free edit of that first chapter, unless you try to scrunch in 4 chapters into one, or, the first 10 pages, that's another pretty solid standard. If they aren't willing to give you the first 10 pages, the first chapter for free with their best edit, go find somebody else. You need to know who you're working with. But in that sample that they provide for you, are they just doing copy edit, or are they throwing little gems in there? Little pieces of insight, little nuggets of knowledge that are going to make you a better writer. That's what Cindy did for me. And it's truly enhanced who I am, and it's made me a better writer. And I know that based on the new drafts that I'm writing. So I've undertaken a contemporary fantasy series. It'll be, if I survive, it'll be 12 books. The first 4 are written. All of them were written between July and August. Yeah, right. July and October. But I'm now done with the first round of editing on all 4 and through the first 5, 6 rounds on that first book so I can get it to Cindy on time in January 2020. And I noticed that the drafts are cleaner. And it's because even though I'm using Dragon to dictate, she's taught me, she's developed me through her editing. And that's been a great growth opportunity. As a new writer yourself, be looking for that type of editor. The person who pushes you to grow, but they don't demand that you grow. And as a good coach, as a good mentor, which I think editors are, right? They're teaching us as they edit. That's a little nugget for them. The good ones will do that. Make sure you're keeping your eye out for those types of people. Because, I mean, honestly, your book is worth it. Now, in terms of the business side of writing, I've gotten a lot more serious about it. In 2019, I spent $1,500 on 2 courses, neither of which I'm done, I've completed, but that I'm currently taking and I'm learning. I'm learning a lot about copy, about statistics, about ads, about blurbs, all of those things. And it's a hearty investment, most definitely. It will be, for the foreseeable future, the only course development, the course investment that I'm going to partake in, simply because that was a huge chunk of change and all of my budgets have changed with this past year's job loss. So I'm still digging into those. My point for you all listening in, new writer, beginning writer, newish writer, don't just look at the price tag. It's very myopic. Yes, some of those price points hurt a lot. They really do. But what are your goals? Your short, medium, and long-term goals for your writing career, and how are they best served? Yes, everybody deserves a vacation. I don't disagree. But if you're miserable in your job, Monday through Friday, sitting in that cubicle, wishing you didn't wake up in the morning, and you hate every minute of it, and you're going to sit there and focus on that 1 week, 2 week vacation that's going to make it all better, I ask you to seriously consider whether or not maybe doing a staycation and putting that vacation budget into a course might not serve you better. And if you plan on being around for a while, a decade, 2, 3, 4, and you're writing and you dream of being a writer because you'll be so much happier than that cubicle job, why wouldn't you serve that goal? If you can't delay that gratification of the vacation, how serious are you about this pursuit? I deserve it. Yes, everybody does. But there's only so much time and only so much money unless you've hit the lottery or have a sugar mama daddy or inheritance or whatever. So don't simply look past those because of sticker shock. What is the long-term value? How quickly will that pay itself back? I'm telling you right now, one of the courses that I'm taking, and no, I'm not going to name them because I'm not done with the course yet, so I'm not comfortable doing that, but it's definitely made a massive difference in my understanding of ads, blurbs, and statistics. What to spend my time on, what not to waste my time on in terms of where to go, what stats to look at, what stats should I really be concentrating and putting that credence and that validity in versus the sexy stat that might not actually serve somebody trying to sell books. How do you structure blurbs? What is a good blurb? What makes it a good blurb? How long should it be? What is the call to action? What about bullet points? What about emotional character arcs? All of these things to think about all come from these courses. And these are things that I've been practicing, especially over the summer and the fall/early winter of 2019. And one thing I have seen is no, I'm not making a living at this. I'm not able to pay rent on my writing salary. And I probably most months couldn't even buy groceries with my writing income. But there has been a marked improvement in terms of consistency of sales. So there's many reasons why. I hope to hit some of those in this quick episode and then obviously over the next year. But something to think about. It's something I don't regret. I'm glad I did it. It's made me a better business person. As I talked about in episode 114, last episode, you've got to be a business person. You can't. It's the very few, the very fortunate who can drop a manuscript off with an agent, get that big fat advance on your book from that big 5 publisher that's going to let you be able to quit your job and just write forever. And there's no guarantee that even if you did get that, which the 1% do, that you'll get it after this 2-3 book deal. That well may dry up. If you're not at peace with being a business person as well as a writer, I'm just going to say it straight. You're in the wrong business. Times have changed. You have to be a business person unless you don't care and you just want to put a book on Amazon for your family to go grab. Otherwise, it's time to get serious if you're not already. And these courses are a great way to fast track you to that. Related to that 3-book objective goal for 2019, I didn't hit it. And many of you know that because you're in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group. If you're not there, why aren't you there yet? I adjusted that after Cindy showed me how much work I had to do with the scales, and I dropped it down to 2 books for the year. And I was at peace with that. I'm glad I did because there's a lot of other things that went on in my life this year. So it helped me manage all that stuff and avoid burnout and stress that I didn't need. So I'm at peace with that. One thing to pass along to those of you listening is, of course, you're building your goals. They have to be realistic. They have to be time specific. They have to be achievable. But one thing you don't hear in that SMART moniker or acronym for goal setting is concrete. There's no C in SMART. So goals should be able to flex. From 3 to 2 books a year, I can sleep easy at night because I know I didn't reduce it so I didn't have more work to do. I reduced it because I wanted to make sure that I really dove deep into what the gift that Cindy had given me in that edit so that I could be a better writer. Something else I started taking on this year that I told you all I was going to do forever were ads. Now, one thing that I will advise to all of you looking at this publishing stuff, there's a lot, right? There's always a lot to swallow, a lot to learn. You constantly feel like you're learning, and there's no easy answers. What works for one person may never work for you. One of the things I promised myself I would do was get more serious about ads. I did it this year, partially in not out of desperation, but out of need. I had that comfort of that full-time job, and I wanted to create. I wanted to get more books, right? Because the best marketing for your book is the next book. I get all of that. You got to build that catalog. I don't have enough out there. I got to get serious about getting more books out, blah, 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 blah. So those were good rationalizations. Legitimate though they are, there is a ceiling to how far I allow myself to get away with it. And I think I know I let myself get away with that for too long. I got more serious about ads in the summer. And then spring, summer. But then when I lost the job, I went hardcore. I've got to do this daily. Now, let me tell you, it may be the courses. It may be the fact that I'm tracking ads. I don't know. But the daily tracking of my ads has helped me immensely. One, I am tracking daily, so I know when something is dead / too expensive to maintain, cut it off. You cut out that expense where you're losing money on an ad, and automatically that pays back to the bottom line, right? You're not losing as much and maybe not losing any money. And my history, those of you who get into the AMS dashboard, you know that little neat little line chart that they show. My history can show that when I started managing ads, my performance improved. And again, that consistency of sales, not simply because of the ads, but in part because of it. If you are serious about doing this, even if you're doing small publisher, but you want that trade deal, I would still encourage you put something for free out there into the void so that you can start learning what that back end of Amazon ads looks like. You don't have to spend a ton of money. You can spend 10 cents a click on these things, but especially for those of you who are kinesthetic learners that you have to actually do something to pick it up. I can talk theory all day with you, but some of you just need to point and click and point and open drop downs and menus, and you just need that to get it. So again, with that very few exception, the very few people who are lucky enough to have everything in the world handled for them, I encourage everybody to get into ads and start playing around and seeing what they're all about. And like I've said in episodes in the past, don't fool yourself into thinking just because you signed a deal with a house that they're going to do these things for you. What is their budget? What are they dedicating to you? What happens when they've exhausted that budget? $600 advertising budget. How quickly do they burn through it? Especially if they're not any good at what they're doing. Or even if they are, but what happens after that's exhausted? Do they extend it quarterly, semi-annually, every fiscal year, or when it's exhausted, is it exhausted? Something to think about, because when that book ages, they might not throw anything at it, and are you okay with letting that book just be out there and hope someone trips across it? Not necessarily something I'd be interested in doing, but having that control and that understanding of these market forces is an important thing to do. And honestly, I just changed my behaviors a little bit. Instead of sitting down at night to decompress from a day of work and writing because I deserved it, I sat down at night to decompress and open my laptop with my spreadsheets and just updated them. For 5 books with a number of ads, which fluctuates all the time, takes 20 minutes to do, if that. So something I would definitely encourage you to think about. And I didn't stop with that, with the creative things. Selling books is important to me. It's a goal. I love being able to create, but if I just wanted to create without business aspirations, I would just keep doing podcasts. The more astute of you, or those of you who follow things more closely, you'll notice that almost all of my podcast feeds are gone. You can't find them anymore. Subject Found, Who Killed Julie, Diary of a Madman, Atheist Apocalypse. You can't find those things because I took down the feeds, closed them. No more expenses in time and money. To maintain those, I was paying each month to just maintain podcast feeds as a lead generator, hoping people would find these podcasts and it would lead them back. But the fact is that doesn't happen necessarily. Most podcast listeners, in context, keep it in mind, we're talking about audio drama, fictionalized podcasts that are more like screenplays. They're movies for your ears, right? So it's not a narration of a novel. It's not an audiobook. This is actors and scripts and sound effects. Again, movies for your ears. The bleed through from audio drama to book sales is minimal in terms of relation to the investment, monetary investment, and that time investment about managing those feeds, those shows, those Facebook pages, those Twitter accounts, all of that stuff. And it spreads people out, and it didn't help me capture a whole lot of people. So what I decided to do was follow the example of Rick Coase. You heard him way early in this show's life, I think around episode 20. And he talked about writing being therapy. But I borrowed his model and I think it's smart. I took all of my podcasts down. I created audio fiction. So if you go search for audio fiction with Paul Sading, you should be able to find it on your podcatcher, I hope. And I'm going to feature all of my fiction there under one piece, all genres. Doesn't matter if it's horror, if it's fantasy, if it's drama, like the Who Killed Julie stuff or the shorts that I have. If it's dystopic, grim, dark, I don't care. All of that stuff is going on that feed because I didn't want to parse myself out. I like to write different things. Most of you do as well. You don't want to write just one genre time and again. You like fresh things. Well, so do I. I stayed away from that because I convinced myself that the Subject Found fans weren't the Who Killed Julie fans, weren't the Diary of a Madman fans, and maybe for the most part they're not. But I didn't want to play that narrow stovepipe role anymore. So I put it all on one feed. I offer it all out there, including my audiobooks, for free on that audio fiction podcast feed. So go subscribe to it if you're not. Thank you for doing that. Tell your friends about it, rate and review it, all that good stuff. But it's still free content. It is my loss leader. What is your loss leader? No, I'm not saying you have to go start a podcast, but look at your loss leader. Is it in line with what your strategy is? Having 4 podcasts plus horrible writing and exhausting, and then the stories we tell. So 5, 6 podcasts. That was a big time suck from selling books. I want to sell books for a living. I have to now as a jobless person. And I can't keep dedicating money and time to things that will act like a clogged up sieve, right? There's not a whole lot trickling through the free stuff into actually spending a whole $3 on a book. They just don't do it. So it was a business case. It just doesn't make sense anymore. So this is the way I'm going. Look at your own. What are those trust statements, those touch points that you have out there? Is it in line with what your goals are? Is it asking too much of yourself? Are you blogging, spending hours and hours making sure that you get a blog out and you're screaming into the void? Maybe the blog isn't the way to go. Maybe you have more fun in your Instagram feed, and taking the time to learn how to actually Instagram correctly would be more beneficial to you. But look at that and ask yourself, are you serving your ultimate goal with what you're putting out there? That's why I went away from that. And I hope in my mistakes, you learn from that. Another nice thing in terms of writing development that came out of the year was joining a mastermind group. Now, this happened in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. Yet again, another reason you should be there if it's the only Facebook page that you go to. But it was the creation of author AC Ward. She's been a guest on the show, and I hope to get her back in the future. She's got a new trilogy out there, so I definitely want to get her on to talk about that. But at first, I turned her down. She threw it out there in the summer. I had those podcasts still alive. I had the books I was struggling with to try to get them out on time. I wasn't sure if I was going to hit my marks. The job was up in the air, all of these things going on, and I passed on it. And then about a month and a half passed, and I realized, you know what? I had been in a mastermind previously for a short time. It dissolved, unfortunately, too quickly, and it was beneficial. So worst case scenario, these are people I trust. This is the Horrible Writing family. Give it a chance, a fair chance, and if not, unplug, and AC Ward will understand. Well, lo and behold, I knew by the end of that first mastermind meeting, we meet once a month, accountability, follow-up, assistance. We do those things like you do in a mastermind. I realized that, whoa, this serves me so well. This is that other voice, the fresh eyes, the fresh perspective that helps me see through stuff. They've greatly impacted me. You're going to find out a little bit later, specific to this show, how they have. But look at audio fiction. I had all kinds of plans for what that was going to be, and they keep talking me back off the ledge, telling me stop giving so much of yourself. And that may upset some of you who actually like that show. I'm going to ask you to be understanding. They were doing that for me. They knew my struggles. They knew the balance I was trying to achieve. And they knew me well enough to know that if somebody doesn't say something to this jackhammer, he's not going to stop. So, they grabbed me around the waistband and yanked me back from the ledge and said, hey, stop trying to do these things. Now, I'm not going to talk specifics because it involves other people, but needless to say, regardless of, I was going to do more than what this show is, they helped talk me out of it, and I'm glad for it because I'm healthier and I'm able to invest that energy in my books. And the structure of the show is as it is because of feedback that came out of that group. Don't do an entire audiobook, week after week after week. Mix it up. See who's out there and who's willing to come. And the download numbers have been incredibly healthy, even though the story each week is different. Sometimes it will be a free chapter from an audiobook, and you might not hear that audiobook again for another month, but they're still there and they'll be there unless something happens, until I am no longer walking on this mortal plane. But that way I can offer a wide, diverse, fictional, pulsating product, which is what I needed to do. I can hear author AC Ward in the back of my headphones right now saying, what is your brand? What is your brand? But the mastermind group is great. Do you have something like that? Well, I'm in a Facebook group. Well, I'm here to tell you a Facebook group is not a mastermind. Do you have the personality for one? You need to come in understanding a mastermind group is not a social group. Yes, we socialize, but that's not why we're there. We are there for our writing careers. This is particular to our group. You could form yours however you wanted, but if you're going to search for some, get that straight in your head first, that this isn't a group for people who just want to shoot the breeze about a show or a TV show. There is a very distinct, very serious purpose to this, but it can, if you match up with the group matches up with you, and you invest fully and honestly in that group, it can accelerate you. It's amazing to see what the people in that group have done from my first meeting in September into August to now in early December. Absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to see what we do. So I'm going to ask you to start thinking about a mastermind group. And if you can't find one, start one. Google, what is a mastermind group? How is a mastermind group structured? How is it run? You can build your own. There's nothing stopping you from saying you can, except, of course, as always, you. And I did do something interesting this fall. In the spring, I went to NorwestCon, as I always do, because it's here in Seattle on Easter weekend. And it's a very good conference. I enjoy it each year. And because one, it's local, it's $70, and the robustness of the authors that they get there is amazing. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. I've got 5 novels out, and I'm going to talk about 2020 here in a second, but I might have outgrown that conference. We'll see. I'm not sure. I may still go for, if no other reason than a writing retreat. But in November, I went to my first ever 20 books to 50K conference in Las Vegas. And wow, the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook is my tribe. But there are a number of people in that group who aren't as serious as I am. They're still in that phase of life where they're comfortable making excuses for themselves. I'm not judging them. I used to be there too. I used to do it all the time, especially when you're in your 20s and your 30s and you think you've got all the time in the world. And then you start getting to the end of your 30s and you realize, oh shit, I'm almost middle age already. When did that happen? It happens to all of us. And I love the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group, but there are a number of people with that attitude, or people who are happy to just write and do nothing else, or write and wait for an agent and try to get one. And that's not my take on this. The game has changed, and I don't feel that's the way forward. I don't feel that's the future unless that seriously evolves. I need to be around people like me, people who are going to write. They're going to write a lot. They're going to write as quickly as they can. And they're very serious about making a living doing this because they see the potential. I was with my tribe in that conference. It was 1,000 people who got it. They just understood. It was intimidating. It was scary as hell. These were serious people, and they're not all making a living. Okay. I can't remember the stats. Craig Martell, who runs a show for Michael Anderle, mentioned like something around half of the people didn't even have a book out yet. But yet they were at that conference listening to people on that stage who walk among us, or they recently walked among us, and they get it. They're making thousands a week just from selling books, not doing anything else, just selling books. That's their thing. That's what they're doing. That was my tribe. I will be going back next year. I think once a year I'm going to need that kick in the ass, and I anticipate next November being in a different spot than I am today. I'm going to need it next year to understand that adjustment. So that will be very, very interesting. And it's something I ask you to think about look at joining their group on Facebook and being ready to register for the conference when that time comes. I'll tell you right now, I don't remember when it happened, but when sometime in the late winter, early spring, when they do open registration, I think it was 32 minutes and the conference sold out. So keep that in mind. They're going to do about another 500 attendees this year, but that just means that 38 minutes is going to sell out. You need to be there, take the day off work, pretend it's Selection Tuesday. I don't care. But you got to be there or you're going to miss out.
Transcription by Renzi Lee over at Renzi Lee Freelancing. For fast turnaround times on content writing, transcription, and editing services, email Renzi at renzileefreelancing@gmail.com.
All right. And I know this is the last episode of the year, so it's going to be a little longer because I looked at the entire year and tried to give you as much as I could about that year in hopes that it'll still give you things to think about over the holiday until I come back in 2020. Speaking of 2020, I've got big changes coming. So I'm going to make it public and eat humble pie later if I need to. But if you're a longtime listener, you know what's been going on. If you're in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group, you probably know what's going on. Unfortunately, over the summer, we, on the job I was working on, got laid off with the anticipation that it would only be a couple days, maybe 2 weeks before we would be called back. Well, that time came and went and we weren't called back. And we waited, always dangling the carrot in front of our faces until months later, month and a half later, they came back and said, "Oh, we're sorry, our bad. If you telework," which I did, "you're not going to be eligible for these jobs." They could have told me a year ago, but they didn't. They chose to mislead us, lie to us, to keep us on the job fat, dumb, and happy, and then they pulled the rug underneath our feet. So the end of the summer, early fall was a very, very dark time for me, very hard adjustment, and it affected a lot. Obviously, my life, my wife's life, my kids who were stressed for their parents, as kids are wont to do, but even the books. Rip released in that time, and I just didn't have the heart and the attention to give to it. I was scared as hell. I joined the military when I was 17. I'd never, ever been without a paycheck in my entire life, ever. And I'm in my 40s. So it was a hell of a scare. And Rip suffered a lot because of it. But you know what? All things in balance. There's only so much you can do. I was at peace with sacrificing that book so that I could work on my own mental health and make sure that I was what I needed to be for my wife. So in that time, we had a discussion because she's freaking awesome. She's absolutely epic. And she knows how hard I work at this stuff. I found out recently a number of people do, and I didn't realize that. Maybe I talk about writing too much and I need other hobbies. But she supported me to the point where she wants me to give this a go. At this point in my life, I've given up a lot, like a lot of you are right now, and maybe you don't see the end of the road. Maybe that's kind of because it needs to be forced on you like it was forced on me. I've always wanted to write for a living. I've never not wanted to when I was myself. During my military career, I wasn't myself. I was exhausted and stressed and miserable basically all the time because of the nature of the job and the fact that it's not a good person-job match for me. Don't know how I survived. Another story for another day. But so for 2020, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going back to work until I need to, if I need to. I've got her full support. I'm very, very, very lucky about that and very grateful for that. And I'm going to give this, I'm swinging for the fences. For those of you who are baseball fans, I am, throwing the Hail Mary pass for those of you who are football fans. I am, full court shot for those of you who are basketball fans. Bicycle kick from the halfway line if you're soccer fans. I don't know a hockey analogy. I'm sorry. But I'm pulling the goalie off and sending another attacker on. There, I hope that works. But that's what we're going to do for 2020. I'm going to give it a go. So in the episodes in 2020, you can kind of expect me to be talking about those things and that journey. Here's your first update. I'm scared as hell because I know I can't buy groceries right now with what I'm making, but I only have 4 books out right now. Well, 5, because by the time you hear this, the scales will be out. Go pick it up, please. Paperback, ebook, audiobook will be coming. But there's going to be a hiatus because there's nothing ready after the scales, nothing ready to go. And that's been one of my failings before. And one of the things I've talked to her about forever and ever and ever. So those of you who aren't talking to your significant other and you want their support, do a better job than I did. Tell them about the industry. Tell them about the marketplace and the realities of it. I should have already had something ready after the scales, but here's why. Here's why I didn't. With very good reason. If you follow my social media or you listen to the show or you're in the Horrible Writing group, you know. If you don't, you won't know. But I'm making a genre shift. For 4 years now, from podcasting to books, people have always thought of me as the guy who writes thrillers and lore and horror and that dark, scary stuff. And even Who Killed Julie is a drama, but it's pretty dark. It's pretty graphic. It's pretty depressing. And everything's dark. And that's what I've been known as. But in 2020, I'm making a shift. If you're a patron, you've already heard the first episode of Crown of Thieves. It's my epic fantasy audio drama, and it will be an epic fantasy novel series in the future. But even before I get to that point, there's going to be another series. Because it's epic, I can't wait that long to get it out there. So I decided, I had an idea in the back of my head forever and a day, always just kind of teasing me from the periphery about this world that I had in my head. Very basic story idea. And before I even lost the job, remember, rewinding to the summer, I still had one. The rumor was we were going to get a 2-year contract. My personal goal was that 2-year contract was going to be my last 2 years working for the man. I was done working for somebody else. And I realized, you know what? Instead of trying to write a massive epic fantasy series that could actually earn me enough to start writing full time, I need to go for something more manageable. So again, a business case. Thinking about the business case for why you're writing. Hint, hint, hint. Life lessons in every story I tell. But I decided to go with a contemporary fantasy. That's going to be the next time you hear from me after the scales. When you pick up the scales, You won't see or hear about another book from me until you hear or see the contemporary fantasy stuff. After the full launch, again, I'm talking to you before Scales actually launches, but after that full launch of the Scales, all my presence, except for reminding you that I've got that other stuff out there, is shifting to fantasy, because that's my thing. That's been my love. My first love was horror. I grew up in a house that didn't do fantasy. I didn't know about fantasy until I did. And then when I found it, I found Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and I thought, oh my God, this is what fiction needs to be. Now, some of you who hate that, remember, I'm talking about the first book, The Massive World. It was amazing. It blew my mind to read something like that compared to 250, 350 page horror books and thrillers. So fantasy has always been my number one love. I can't wait to get back into it. I've been talking about it a little, but my social media presence will fully shift to fantasy, and I'm going to try to gear everybody to think of Paul Sadine. Yeah, I want you to think of me as diverse and flexible and multifaceted, but I also want you to think of me as a fantasy writer from now on, now that you've heard this. So genre shift is going to be big. Guess what I'm going to talk about a lot next year is that experience going from one genre to another, the struggles, the strife, the tribulations that I'm going to experience, and I hope at the end of it, the successes. I've deliberately set up this story. It's called the Zodiac series. It's going to be 12 books. The first 4 are written already, but it's going to be a contemporary fantasy. It's going to be fun with action. I basically, when I try to give you a 10-second elevator pitch to anybody, hey, what's this series about? I want you to imagine, something like Good Omens, but with action in it. That's what I'm going for with this, is I want that lighthearted, comedic fiction. There are angels and demons in it, so it's a good relation to kind of paint your mind on, but I want you to picture that with an action movie thrust in the middle of it. Jim Butcher meets Good Omens kind of thing. That's what I'm going for, and it's a lot of fun. I'm loving it. I can't wait to start talking more about that series. The main character's name is Ezekiel. He goes by Zeke, and he's the only demon in the history of the species of demons to not have magical abilities. And that's all I'm going to say for right now. Stick with the show and you'll find out more in the future. What else am I doing? My goal, I'm going to say it here first, is to publish 5 times in 2020. My best was 3 times. I'm going for 5. We'll see. Like I said, the first 4 books are already written, so all I need to do is figure out one more thing to publish. But again, with my wife's backing, there's no reason why I can't hit 5 and maybe even exceed that, though I'm going to temper that right now because I don't want to overshoot on this. But that's the goal. I'm serious about this. I want to write full time, and I need to, and I'm doing it all on my own. I'm not partnering for this series, so we'll see how that goes. I hope to hit it. Now, here's that little asterisk next to that comment. I can't make this official yet because there hasn't been an agreement, but I'm in deep talks with another author, another member of the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. If you're not there, why aren't you there yet? About doing a collaborative series where I'm pitching this individual to do a dystopic, futuristic, grimdark series with me, a trilogy to start, maybe more to follow. We'll see. But I really respect this person. This person knows me. They get me. They understand me. They're talented. They are professional. They're serious, which is, I need somebody like that. I'm pretty intense. So I need somebody who can tolerate that intensity and also give it to me back as well if I'm having a down day, an off day, etc. So there will be a lot more to come about that. But one of the things that you can look for, again, yet one more thing into 2020 from this show, is I'm going to talk about that collaborative experience. And maybe if this person comes along for the ride and we do this, I'll have them give their peace of mind from time to time. I would really like that. I haven't talked to them about this yet, so they may hear it the same time you are about their perspective on this collaborative project and the lessons learned and the things they would do differently, et cetera, et cetera. So if I don't hit the 5 releases in 2020, I will be utterly shocked. I'm going to stay at 5. I'm not changing it. I would really like to publish 8 times next year. If not 9, if not 10. I got to stop. So as we start wrapping up this episode, I want you to think about my reflection this year, what I've just shared with you, and notice, of course, that I gave you homework in between each little sliver in there. I hope you picked up on that. If not, re-listen to it. Seriously. I'll try to edit this down, but it'll definitely be over or under an hour. But pick up on those little nuggets that I shared in there. I didn't just tell you all that stuff to kind of talk, oh, hey, here's my life in the past year. It was more, here's what happened to me. Here's how it benefited me, how I learned. But hey, something for you to think about. Type of language. I hope you picked up on that. And I hope you're thinking about that, because here's your homework. What are your 2020 goals? I don't care when you listen to this. If you catch it the day it's released, if you wait a week or 2, don't make me wait longer than that. Or if you don't listen to it until January, it's still time. It's February, it's still time. Stop giving excuses if you are giving yourself excuses. What are your goals for the entire year? I can't think that long. Well, you need to start. Empowerment through candor, folks. Enough with the excuses. You can sit down and develop goals for the entire year for your writing. So do it. And when you say you can't, sit down and figure out why you're telling yourself that. Don't tell me how you can't, tell me how you can. That's what's important in what we're doing here. But I want to hear some of those. Hit me at Paul Sading or at Writing Horrible on Twitter. Hit me over on Facebook, author Paul Sading. Hit me in the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group. But let's have that conversation. Email me. Go over to paulsading.com, click on the contact tab, and send me an email about what you're struggling with, what you're going through, how your goals are going. I love getting emails when somebody says, hey, I've written for the first time in 20 years. That stuff is cool. It is awesome to hear. I want to hear more of it. Now, big announcement before we get out of here. But before we do that, if you haven't rated or reviewed this show yet, please go do so. This show needs some TLC in those ratings and reviews. As always, it's social validation, folks. You know you want reviews on your books. If this show has done anything for you in the life of you listening to it, I need at least a couple seconds for you to click that, star rating that you're going to give it. Yes, I would love 5 stars. I understand it's not 5-star for everybody, but I really, truly appreciate, as I do those, but I really, truly appreciate when people actually sit down for a couple minutes and just punch out a sentence or 2 or 3 to tell other people why this show worked for them. That helps convince them better than I can. Number 1. Number 2, it helps me see how I'm serving the world. I don't just do this to hear my own voice. I hate my own voice. I do this to help other people. And if I don't hear from other people, I don't know if I am. And I question it. So stop me asking questions. I need to focus on other things. Saying that, big announcement. And thank you. If you go do that, thank you very much, sincerely. If you would like to support this show, you can. Go to paulsading.com, support tab. You can find out how you can do that there. Now, the big announcement, it's not so grand, but it is something I want to talk to, because, again, this is a seed I'm planting in your head, because I don't want you making the mistakes that I have. And you might not be making mistakes. Maybe I didn't make a mistake. Maybe this served me well, but things change. It's the only constant in the world, right? So there are going to be changes, and the changes are going to serve my writing career. This is a podcast. This is free. This is something I give and do for the community, because you know what? You are my tribe. The Horrible Writing family is my tribe. I want to do more interviews. I can't. I will do some in 2020. I met some great people at 20 Books to 50K who I would love to interview. We'll see how all of that goes. But there are going to be changes to the show. There has to be. I'm giving too much time to this podcast, and it doesn't return. It doesn't help me sell books. Remember, what are your goals? These are business cases that you might have to go review again for yourself. It's stuff I have to do for myself constantly. Are my behaviors helping me achieve XYZ? So is the Horrible Writing podcast helping me sell fiction, my horror and thrillers, and my upcoming fantasy? No, it's not. I'm talking to other writers. I love you to death, but you're not my market. Most of you don't care about horror and thrillers, especially mine. And I don't know if you'll care about fantasy. You're not my market. So I have to cut back on the things that are not serving my goal. My goal is to make a living writing. So that with a job loss, even though I have more time to podcast, I have more need to write because writing makes books, books sell makes money in Paul's bank account. Paul eats ramen pride instead of breadcrumbs, right? So the news is sad, or maybe you're happy about it, but the news is that this show will continue through 2020 and beyond, I hope. But it will go to bi-weekly instead of weekly. I'm going to throttle back. I'm going to cut my workload in half for this show for the year and test that out and see how it goes. I don't know about episode length. I am not going to double episode length just because I cut back the number of episodes. They're going to be quick and tight and completely unlike this episode here. But that's the way of the future. I hope that's okay with everybody. I hope you all understand. I'm sure you do because you're absolutely epic. But that's what I need to do for myself and to reach my writing goals. What's standing in your way of your writing goals? Are people respecting your writing time, or do they stomp all over it? Because that's what I hear all the time. And people laugh it off and rationalize it away. But that's still intruding on you, violating your writing time. Just like this show, not your fault, my fault. I'm the one who created it and ran it. But this show is violating my writing time. It's trespassing on my writing time. So fortunately for me, I'm in control of everything in terms of this show, and I'm going to make an executive decision. And it throttles back starting in January. So immediately, when you hear from me again, season 4, episode 116, you'll hear once every 2 weeks, twice a month, however you want to look at it. And that'll be it. And hopefully that'll help me get those 5, 8, 9, 10 books out in 2019. All right. Thank you for being with me throughout the year, for walking this path, taking this journey. Thank you for being with me for 3 years if you have been. It doesn't matter how long you've been around. I'm just glad you're here. Rate, review the show. Definitely come over to the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group on Facebook. We'd love to have you there, even if it's the only Facebook group that you actually interact on. And then definitely, most definitely, absolutely definitely, keep subscribed because the show's not going away. Keep listening. Reach out if you ever need anything. Let me know how things are going. Have a wonderful holiday season, a safe new year, and I will see you in an epic 2020. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sadin, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsadin.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.